Hi, everyone.
Greetings. We're in Crisis of Conscience, Chapter 6, Double Standards, talking about Mexico and Malawi in the late 1970s, and covering up the facts from Jehovah's Witnesses. Ray starts to have doubts about this policy. He says, in 1975, I was assigned to write material on the latest campaign of terror being carried on against Malawian witnesses. In explaining why Jehovah's Witnesses viewed the purchase of the party card so seriously, I presented information that had been published earlier, tracing a parallel between their stand and that of Christians in early centuries who refused to put a pinch of incense on an altar as a sacrifice to the genius of the Roman emperor. At the time of doing so, I felt a sense of uncertainty. Was the parallel completely true? There was no question but that the placing of the incense on the altar was viewed as an act of worship. Was purchasing a party card just as clearly an act of worship? I could not really see any strong argument in that direction. Was it then a violation of Christian neutrality, a breaking of integrity with God? I cannot say that my thinking on the matter fully crystallized at that time, nor am I dogmatic on the point today. But the following thoughts came to mind, making me wonder how solid a basis the organization, of whose governing body I was now a member, had for taking a positive, unbending position of condemnation of such card purchase as an act of unfaithfulness to God.
The issue hinged on the fact that the card was a political card, representing membership in a political party. To many, and particularly to Jehovah's Witnesses, the word political is viewed as describing something inherently bad. Corrupt politicians have, over the centuries, contributed toward the unsavory connotation the term often carries today. The same might be said, however, of such terms as pious, which frequently calls up visions of sanctimoniousness and feigned holiness due to the hypocrisy of some religious persons. Yet the term pious actually relates to dutiful reverence and earnest devotion to God. That is its basic meaning. Similarly, the word political carries this basic definition. And here he gives you the New Webster's Dictionary definition of political. Having a fixed or regular system or administration of government relating to civil government and its administration, concerned in state affairs or national measures pertaining to a nation or state, or to nations or states, as distinguished from civil or municipal, treating of politics or government as political parties. So that's the definition.
I knew that the word political, as well as politics, came from the Greek word polis, meaning simply a city. In Greek, polites meant a citizen, this English word being drawn from the Latin term for city. And the adjective politikos, from which our English political is derived, meant of the citizens of the state. The English language received these terms through Latin, and the Latin term politia means simply citizenship, government, administration. Such words as police and policy all derive from the same source. Obviously, all government is political in this fundamental sense of the word. Every government on earth is a political entity. Every people organized under a particular form of government form a polity, that is spelled with a ty at the end, from the Greek politeia. To be a citizen of any country is to be a member of such a political state, enjoying the benefits and bearing the responsibilities this membership brings. The extent to which one may submit to the demands of such a political state may vary, but the membership is still a fact.
It is of such political states and their rulers that the Apostle Paul writes at Romans chapter 13. exhorting Christians to be submissive to these as unto God's servant or minister. So he's referring to Romans 13:1, the beginning of Romans 13, right? True political activity may become corrupt, and there is no question but that the political state of Rome became extremely corrupt. Yet that of itself does not make everything political inherently evil, nor does it make national citizenship, membership in a political state or nation, something inherently bad. Political parties, in their competition for power, are largely responsible for the added, subordinate, not the basic or fundamental meaning which the word politics may have, that of the plotting or scheming of those seeking personal power, glory, position, or the like. This is evil, but not because everything related to political activity is evil. For the absence of political activity is in its secular sense the absence of government. Yeah, so when I read that, I thought, I couldn't help but think, even the organization is organized, and it calls its leaders the governing body.
Yeah.
Well, that's politics.
In its real sense, they are more political than most what they call the devil's political system. The
They
system
make more
of
demands.
things. Yes, they definitely make more absolute demands than most governments do on this earth. Certainly, the governments of the West can have no such power as the Watchtower has. So if you're talking in terms of power corrupts, then they have far more absolute power than any group I can think of on earth right now.
But,
Certainly not just religion. I'm talking politics as well.
Why were we allowed to have birth certificates and passports? You know, that seems it's just common sense that people wherever they live need to be organized, need some policies, governments, policing. That's necessary to keep order.
It's nice that Ray, even in this early stage of his removal from the Watchtower, does not see in the same black and white terms he once had to.
Yeah.
And the reason is because he sees how this works on a real grassroots level. You can see that government, as he said just previous to this, government of the United States actually works better in terms of fairness and justice to its people than the government of Jehovah's Witnesses does.
And he sees them as God's servant. In that aspect, they are God's servant. They are, keeping order and keeping a level of morality.
But they're punishing, as Paul says in Romans 13, they're punishing unrighteousness, whereas oftentimes the Watchtower is punishing righteousness. In other words, when people see the truth and dare to expose it, then they get punished.
Yeah.
But of course they say, well, we're doing God's will because he wants his congregation clean. Well, that's the same reasoning that governments often use about their country. They're trying to maintain unity. What's our link?
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
That's
Who's the best fit? Bishops and clergy or JW's governing body?
Yeah, this is all a meditation upon Lord Acton's famous saying, absolute power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's never better exemplified than by the Watchtower. See you next time.